everybody. We are ready for our next presentation. I am honored to introduce our two next speakers from the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal project. Their names are Leora Wolf-Prusan and Oriana Ides.
Good morning. It's so good to be here. My name is Leora, she, hers. Over break, Oriana just got connected with people we went to college with, people that my mom worked with at City College, people we've organized with, so it feels so good to be in this room. I want to do a quick audio. How does it feel? A little clear? Okay, it's good. Okay, cool. So I'm Leora. Am I anyone's first Leora in the room? Okay, well, I'm the best one and the only one. Let the record know and show. Don't trust Leoras who spell their names with I's. The E is the way to go. This is my colleague, Oriana. We work at an organization called the Center for Applied Research Solutions, but as Chelsea, and let's just pause and give a massive kudos again to Chelsea and Marla for bringing us and for this day. Oriana and I are founding faculty of a project called the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal Project. You can go to schoolcrisishealing.org, known as SCRR in the streets. It's not, don't say that, just SCRR. And we're here this morning, and we've already been so beautifully set up by so many incredible colleagues. We're here this morning to, we're gonna leave the word keynote out the window. I don't know about y'all, but the word keynote gives me like, can't do it. But we're gonna lead this morning in the next couple hours in some workshopping of what we've all been handling and what we can all hold for each other. We're gonna use that phrase back and forth throughout our time this morning, handling and holding. I don't know about y'all, who feels more like you've been handling in the last couple weeks? Or you've been handled, maybe? And so this morning we get a moment of pause and a moment of settling before the rush of the students and the rush of the life and the rush of the dentist appointments. As someone pointed out, I have to make my own. And so that is what our day is today. You have a participant guide around you. If there is one floating that other hands would like to have, please raise your hand or ask a colleague to pass down some dead trees, and we'll get that to you. You will also get the deck and the participant guide in your email. So we'll get everything to you that you need. You don't need the participant guide. It's just if you have tiny font fear and you don't want to see across the room. Okay, I'm going to see, here we are. Okay. So we were invited this morning because of our work with the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal Project. We are two educators who believe that this whole thing that we've been taught to leave the personal at the door and be professional doesn't work, doesn't serve us, worked for someone to tell us to do that. But actually, this blend of who we are and the real work of this year and the years coming is to re-embrace our entire selves, our full selves, and our full humanity in all its chaotic messiness. So this morning, what we'll be doing is we'll be sitting with these two essential questions. I'm going to read them out loud, and I'm going to welcome you to feel how they land. Which one feels stickier? Which one feels a little gooier? What needs healing and transformation inside me in order to sustain healing in my work, in my care relationships, and in my team culture? And what needs healing and transformation inside us, either as a team, as a department, as an organization, as a community, to stabilize and reimagine the way we care for one another and our students? If you feel open to it, I'm going to invite you to just do a raise of hand if that first question is the one that pulls your heartstrings a little bit more. Anyone kind of gravitating towards that first question? Anyone gravitating towards the second question? Yeah, cool. Both are necessary. We've been also often trained as educators. We'll use that word educator really broadly as everyone in this room, but we've been really trained and conditioned to do a lot of external for the student's well-being. And this morning we get to center ourselves in that too, in the both and of the relationship. We'll be talking throughout the day, but I want to be really clear about something. We are not using the word stabilize to insinuate that we get to tolerate anything that we've been handling. We're using the word stabilize so that we get an invitation to care for our nervous systems so that we can interrupt harm and organize for justice. Okay, so today, here's what it might feel like. Part one, we'll get to connect with ourselves and each other, the inside me and inside us, of what are we carrying today, what are we holding on to, and what might we want to release. We'll move into then a moment of creating shared language as a part of a practice for us so that when I say grief and you say grief, or I say loss and you say loss, we know where we're coming from. Oriana will be leading us through a practice where we'll then get time both ourselves and then in group to talk about how we want to be held and hold ourselves in the next semester and maybe even beyond. What values anchor us so that when the world tries to, and they're trying real hard, regardless of our humanity, we get to say, no, thank you. Let me remind you of what makes me human, gives me a sense of safety, dignity, belonging, and agency. And then we'll close with a little bit of, here's what one thing that I want to do in the days ahead. How's that sound? Okay. Y'all are like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but okay, we'll go with it. All right. Oriana.
All right, good morning. Does this sound okay? Yes. My name is Oriana Ides, and it is a real honor to be here as you are studying and readying yourself to receive your students. It was said earlier how deeply they desire to make it through this system and do well in the world, and it's just such a beautiful thing that they get to come in contact with you. So thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. We want to create a little opportunity to continue to humanize and honor who we are, what we're bringing to this moment. So I want to invite us into a quick activity, a quick connector, where we will, in just a moment, turn to a person next to us, and maybe the first thing you do is act out the cat you are most feeling like in this moment, okay? So that's the first task. You're going to turn to someone, act out your cat, and then introduce yourself. Who are you in this very moment, right? It might be the role that you hold. It might be whose child you are. It might be the commitment you hold to the semester. But who are you in this moment? Where do you work? And what role, which college? And what role do you play in supporting the wellness of others?
You'll see our hands come up when we're trying to bring folks back together. And if you see our hand come up, please help us. Cats, herding the cats when we're done with the exercise. Can't wait to see the confident ones.
As we come back together, acknowledge what came up for you, how it felt to be heard and witnessed. Maybe the count of 3, let's all chat our cat together, okay? Do it. Yes, yes. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Hey. All right, the front row is live. Thank you. Back row, not so much. So as we create the container for our time together, I hope you will notice and feel on a visceral level some slowing down. And with that slowing down, often there's discomfort, there's resistance, and just so off top, want to name that. that those are sensations, feelings, emotions that may arise for you. And that's really beautiful, powerful information, and not to ignore. There's so many ways that you can and probably will be accessing or approaching what it is we have to share today. Many of us are facilitators and holders of space and teachers, absolutely. And for the next 2 hours, this space is really for you and about you. So the invitation is to join as a participant, however you can. And I might, I imagine we might dip in and out of that. But just if we can have that way of being, a way of engaging as an intention. Much of what we are hoping to do is create brave and vulnerable space for you to acknowledge what it is you're holding and the shape in which what you're holding is showing up in your body and in your relationships. And because of that, we'd like to introduce these ways of engaging in community and conversation, in honesty and awareness. And so if you could read over them to yourself right now, acknowledging what resonates, where curiosity may peak. How do they feel? How might they sound coming out of your mouth? What might they make space for in you, in us, for our students? What must we release in order to embrace? Maybe choose one that you're feeling most interested or attached to trying on for the next hour and some change. If we could get a few folks to shout out a way of being.
Open.
Thank you. Open.
Safe.
Thank you. Right, and safe is such an important one. We know for any learning, right, safety must be present. And so today, we cannot control how other people show up or offer, but we can take note of our felt sense of safety and care for ourselves so that we are feeling safe, right? Softness, beautiful. Yes, there are so many forces that pull us away from mindfulness or awareness, right? So what do we need to release in order to embrace or find mindfulness? There's one that I deeply love. Trust, yes. Trust in ourselves, trust in our voice and our knowing, trust in one another, trust in us. Wholeness, yeah. Much of the grind culture we wade through daily, that we are a part of, the default culture, really works to dismember us, right? And only to exist in it in a functional way, right? Or to achieve success, we must dismember ourselves in many ways, right? And leave parts of ourselves at the door. There's this beautiful idea that there's a conversation we are longing to have, right? Words that have not yet maybe been acknowledged within us or spoken out loud before, that we have the opportunity to speak, to affirm, to be witnessed and heard, and that might it be our work in this time together to find that conversation. And so just want to invite folks into that possibility. If there's anything else that you need in order to feel present and open, I love what has been shared. Again, the front row is just, please share out loud or at any point, let us know. I just want to give a moment for that. So beautiful. Yes, taking care of yourself really necessitates an awareness, right? So notice and care for yourself. We had wholeness, trust, mindfulness. So thank you for opening, softening to these ways of engaging in conversation, in listening, and exploration. So as I said, hopefully we are feeling a slower pace We are noticing what slowing down feels like in our nervous system, in our bodies. And for the next few moments, I want to offer a settling in practice. It's an invitation for you to engage however feels accessible to you. Bayo Akamalafe says that these times are urgent. The inclination is to pick up, to hold more, do more, right? But what happens if we slow down in an urgent time? And so also, Resma Menakem says that our bodies are holding a story if we're willing to listen. So for the next few moments, can we listen into our body? Can we listen into the land and maybe the wisdom and presence of our ancestors? So when you're ready, I'm going to guide us through a brief settling in practice that supports connection to breath, body, and the land. And if we can, find some comfort in our seat where our feet are planted firmly beneath us. If we're holding something, we can set it down at our feet. For the first few breaths, can you open or soften to noticing? Before effort to change or label, without judgment, can you just notice? Might help to close your eyes or lower your gaze. You feel into the quality of your breath. Notice its cadence. You bring your awareness from the top of your head slowly down through your chest, your legs, your feet. What sensations? Noticing the temperature. Where do you feel stagnation, flow? And then at your own pace for the next few breaths, can you extend some curiosity? Maybe you go to a point in your body that has some sensation. What does it need from you? What is it telling you? The next few breath cycles, can you offer your body, your breath, what it needs? You unclench your jaw, soften the tissue around your eyes, drop your shoulders. Feel into the vibration of the land. Feel into the legacy of this room. Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seals. The Black Panther Party originated here at this college, right? Think about their reverberations. You have that same opportunity to cultivate young minds, to hold them, to see them. Extending gratitude. You feel ready, come back to this room, acknowledging the information that came to you and through you, the slower pace. If we can turn to page 1 of the participant guide that you should all have, I invite you into 3 or 4 minutes of quiet reflection, affirmation, self-witnessing. Times are uncertain, times are unsteady, times are a lot, but there's wisdom and anchoring within you and all around us. And so for the next few moments, we connect to that.
And there are pens at the welcome table if you are penless.
Reading over the questions or starting at the top and working your way down. Absolutely won't be able to answer all of them. Maybe find one that calls you. If words are hard to find, you can draw, you can sit with your thoughts. Have a 1 more minute. So we're gonna put a comma or a pause on what you're writing. There's absolutely no way we could finish our response to any one of these questions right now. They're really big questions. Right? It's noticing what's coming up for you, if there are any themes. And we're going to turn back to the person or people that we introduced ourselves to just a few minutes ago. And we're going to share. You can share a strong line of what you wrote. You can share the essence of what you wrote. Or you can read it for word to word or engage in a conversation. I want to make a little time for us to share full group. What surfaced for you as you engaged in the settling in practice, as you explored your responses to these questions, as you engaged in conversation with your comrades? What surfaced? What's surfacing? And Leora has a microphone. Love a few people to share out. You know it's vulnerable. Okay.
So what resonated to me the most out of all of these questions was what protects me and what sustains me. And so for me, what protects me is the idea of I am enough. Like I said earlier when I did the welcome speech, I am a domestic violence survivor. So I do come from a place where I didn't feel like I was enough. And even in my childhood, I was an overachiever type kid, always feeling like I had something to prove, whether it was with my parents, whether it was with my teacher, and it put that idea in me that I had something to prove, which made me feel like I wasn't enough in the moment of where I am. So what protects me now is me affirming to myself constantly that I'm enough in the present moment. I'm enough as your colleague. I'm enough helping the students. I'm enough supporting the district, but I'm enough for myself overall. In this moment, in this space, at this time, learning to accept who I am, because I might be one person Monday and be a whole nother person by Friday. Y'all know with the hair, I'm like Diana Ross. You might see me with short hair one day and long hair the next. So, but, just knowing that I'm enough in whatever capacity that I am in. And what sustains me is having patience with myself and knowing that I'm enough. Sometimes we want things done, we are microwave century type people. We want things done quick, fast, in a hurry, and not everything can be done quick, fast, and in a hurry. Some things is like a convectional oven. Y'all know I'll take pizza, for example. Pizza tastes totally different when you warm it up in a microwave versus if you wait till the convectional oven warm up and pop it in and take its time. As they said, the crust is a little bit crispier versus being soggy from the microwave. Now, it does the same thing. It warms it up. But the consistency and the content and the quality of it is different when we learn how to have patience with ourselves. So with me, I learned how to have patience with myself in affirming that I'm enough in this moment. I'm enough in this moment at this time, tomorrow, just as I was enough yesterday. So that's it.
Thank you. Both of the things that you shared really speak to the ways in which we're socialized, right? Our self-value is formed at a very young age, right? Through early childhood experiences, through our experiences with the world, how we're received and perceived, right? And as people going through the world, we are looking for stories that confirm or negate our self-worth, the story we have about our self-worth, right? And so thank you for reminding me that and for bringing that into this space. The opportunities to challenge our own feelings of self-worth, right? There's so much is trying to tell us we are not worthy enough unless we buy unless we purchase, right? And then the other is like slowing down, right? And not needing to receive everything immediately. Some things absolutely necessitate urgency, right? But not everything. And it is really valuable if we can ask ourselves, is this something needing urgency right now, or am I caught up in someone else's storm, right? Manufactured storms. Yeah. Can we hear from one or two other people?
For me, it's okay for me to talk about me. I could do that, but when it came to us and we, I felt sad. I really felt a deep sense of sadness when I deal with we, with us, especially in Peralta. And I don't know where it came from, and I thought it was just me, but they both agreed. So, yeah.
Thank you. And that sadness deserves space. Thank you. We have a hand right here.
Thank you for that honesty. That was very vulnerable, and I heard that. I felt it deeply, and I recognized that. I will say that I loved all the questions. I took them all on. The one that I want to share about is what I'm ready to lay down. So I have a few things. I'm ready to lay down being right. I don't need to prove to you how smart I am. And I can listen just as strongly as I can make my point. I'm willing to lay down fear. Pause and breathe instead of speaking fear in my response by being defensive when it's not really you I'm afraid of. And I borrowed this from my colleague. And therefore, what I'm really willing to lay down is the pain and the hurt that I just carry in my body that I haven't arrested, because I want you to know that I've got pain and I've been hurt. But that's not the thing I really want you to know about me, but for some reason that's the thing.
Thank you. I think there's a quote that we're going to explore a little later, that our pain is walking through the world looking for a witness, right? And as we witness it, we can lay it down. But until then, it wants to be seen and heard. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Leora.
Okay, we're going to shift the energy a little bit more, but continue the discourse. Any of you Francis Weller nerds? Cool. We are. Welcome to the party. Francis Weller is a psychotherapist, is a grief teacher. He wrote in his latest book that grief will be the keynote for the foreseeable future. And so we start this quote: grief ripens us, pulls us up from the depths of our soul, of our souls, and reminds us what is most authentic in our beings. Grief is the great reminder, humbler, anchor. So we're gonna bring a block party into the room. Y'all down with a good block party? Okay, cool. This is the block. We're gonna party. Here's what's up. In a moment, I'm gonna ask you to rise and push everything that could be a tripping hazard under chairs, and we're gonna invite you. There will be a couple quotes that will come up. Here, this is the practice. There will be a couple quotes that will come up, and in between, we're gonna invite you to just take a walk around the block, quietly as possible. If you see someone that you want to give an eye twinkle to or a demure cat to, please do, but we're going to try and keep it as quiet as possible. And then you'll hear me cue you, You'll pause, make awkward eye contact with someone in front of you, and then talk about the quote that's up on the screen. Check? Check? All right, cool. Let's put everything down, get up, and do a quiet walk around the room. There's lots of space up here. Lots of space up here. Quiet walk around the room. Okay, colleagues, your first quote. Find one or two people. Say hello, introduce yourself, read the quote, and then say, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, what comes up for you? Block party commences. All right, next quote. Find a new conversation partner, say hello. The next quote is on the screen. I'm going to invite us to take a pulse check on just the last two. We have one more, but the last two quotes. Just have a moment to kind of in your own bodies go like, this is the thing that I want to remember from the last 5 minutes of my life.
One thing that came up for me was just the value of collective space to share about these kinds of issues. The resonance that I was getting from the conversations of like, yeah, I was like, found myself finger snapping and stuff like that. And so it's not just sort of me reflecting alone, but it's like collective wisdom. So that I really resonated with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other wisdoms to put in this room, put out into this room?
This quote, I don't know that we would disperse the feeling of trauma in the presence of an empathetic witness. I think an empathetic witness can be ourselves, and we may need others to help us with that healing. And I think that we're the best to heal our own, but with professionals and help and resources. And I think that with that presence of empathy, the trauma doesn't leave us, but we learn how it has strengthened us and how to persevere in spite of us. Because a lot of us are persevering, holding this trauma and still doing great things. But that was the main thing, was to be our own empathetic witness.
Beautiful.
And to move with the trauma because it's a part of us.
Thank you. Okay, a word was just dropped. Thank you. So we're going to move into this one. I'm going to invite you to turn around and find a new block party conversation partner, and I'm going to invite you to try and take down the volume like a couple. Just find the excitement settle and connect on this Prentice Hemphill quote. When you see my hand come up, help me out, and then that will be our invitation to return back to our original seats. So we'll do one more round, hand raised up, and then back into the original seat. So find a new connection partner, a new empathetic witness, and we'll come back together. I'm going to invite us to take a big shoulder up to our ears, shoulder back, shoulder down. Thank you. We got a couple asks over in between the block party mix-ups. You can use any of this with your students. You can have all the quotes. You can have all the images. You can have all the moves. You take it all. Take it all. Take it all. Okay. All right. So we're gonna move into the next section, which is us to continue to create shared language. And our colleagues have already helped us get there. We've already opened us up to what we're laying down. We've already opened ourselves up to how we want to be seen, how we want to see ourselves. I want to offer this orienting framework. We're going to offer three frameworks. I'm going to offer this first framework, which is by our colleagues at Trauma Transformed, based out of Oakland. Any of you familiar with T2, Trauma Transformed? Okay, now you are. So what Trauma Transformed offers us is that in a relationship, in a classroom, in a department, in a team, in a community college, in any community, that we as humans either connect through our trauma or by our trauma, or we understand what we're bringing to the shared table. That's the middle. And or we are committed, in that last quote, just like Prentice Hemphill was saying, we are committed to not only showing up, acknowledging what we're bringing to the table, but actually seeing what we're bringing to the table as the key gifts in the room. Right? That the trauma and the grief or crisis, they are not things to be afraid of, they are not things to silence, they're not things to get uncomfortable with, although we are, but they're actually things to welcome because they're the biggest teachers and connectors. What I want to offer you is that this way of being trauma organized, I don't have to tell you what that feels like, because many of us live in that every day. Just over the last 24 hours, Oriana and I experienced our own experience of this. We got an email from the federal administration, immediate layoffs. Did anyone read that in the news, right? $1 billion in an email, immediate termination from the federal grants, $2 billion. And then 24 hours later, reinstated, right? Right? So that is a beautiful example, thank you so much, the world, of what it looks like to be in a trauma-organized experience, where the key themes are rupture, 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 break, break, rupture, break. And all we want to do as humans, our entire existence, all we want to do is create a cohesive story of self. That's it in this world. Who am I? Where do I belong? Who do I belong to? Our whole existence. So grief and crisis and trauma and harm go like this. You're this, you're that, rupture. I was sharing with folks, I have a 3-year-old at home. Anyone has a toddler also at home? Okay, anyone was a toddler? Okay. Does anyone know a toddler? Okay. Anyone behave like a toddler? No, okay, no. Okay, all right. We love the toddlers, we love them. But all you will find toddlers doing is seeking predictability and cohesion. Because the toddler brain is going, who do I belong to? Who am I a part of? Who am I? And needs a start, middle, and beginning, repetition. How many times have I told my daughter the same story? 1,000,000 times, right? Because repetition is the way that we as humans create a sense of safety and pattern. So I want to offer that if you are working with students or colleagues, and you're like, I told you that 7 million times already. I sent you the email. We went over this. We talked about, and they're still needing repetition. That might mean a sign that there's some fracture happening and that person in front of you is seeking some cohesion. When any of us, either if we have been survivors, and we've heard in the room, there are many survivors in this room, we are also, but there are many survivors in this room, one of the key indicators if you are moving through something versus in it is when there's usually a full story. This is who I was, this is what happened, and this is where I am now. So part of our role as a community is to love on, deeply love on, empathetically witness those of us and our community and our colleagues and our students who are in this kind of experience of fragmentation, to catch ourselves when we are perpetuating it, when we really need to work at someone or tell at someone versus with someone. I have sent many an at email. And the work is for us to pull ourselves and to anchor ourselves and to say we demand and deserve reflective, collaborative, relational experiences where our whole selves is the work, not the grade, not the performance, but our whole messy humanity. And so part of what that means is really stepping into, and all of you are doing this right now, meaning making of what has been happening and meaning making of what we've been holding. Okay. Part of what Oriana and I have been constructing together at the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal Project, which is where this conversation comes from, is a vision and a demand that we as educators don't only get to get ready for an emergency or a crisis or have to respond to emergency and crises, but get to recover and then even potentially engage in renewal. So that when a shooting happens, when a death happens, when it is happening, it's not just the day, but there's actually some weeks after, months after, years after of coming together and saying, how am I understanding that experience and how am I integrating it into who I am right now? So I'm going to offer one, this is the second framework. So this is our recovery and renewal framework. We move from crisis to connection and from chaos to cohesion. So if something is feeling chaotic, I invite you to take a moment and go, what is one pinky toe moment that I can create more togetherness in the way I'm understanding or the way I'm being or the way I'm moving? It often looks like, especially if you are faculty or you're teaching, it might look like at the end of every class to say, we started here, we then moved into here, and we're closing on here. Truly, to help everyone in the room go, aha, this is the story of what we just did. Crises, the way that we talk about crises, it's not an event, it's not necessarily even, it could be a person, no, it's not a person, but crises are experiences that overwhelm our collective nervous system. And the biggest, like I said earlier, the biggest function of a crisis is to rupture, is to break apart people, identity, sense of self, connection to land, connection to ancestry. And here is the first part of the teaching we want to offer. We learned from Judith Herman. Any Judith Herman fans in the room? Cool, she's gonna be a new friend. Okay. Judith Herman, who wrote the book Trauma and Recovery in 1992, and she studied survivors of violence and what it looks like, not what it takes, but what it looks like for folks to move through harm. And what she said is after studying many, many peoples around the world, what she said is that the first move is to establish safety and stabilization, and for everyone to know that there's no such thing as guaranteed safety. We are constantly figuring out, assessing what safety feels like, looks like, sounds like. But that there's a moment of stability. Some of us are still seeking that moment of stability. That's a really good indicator that you might be in this part one. Some of your students are lifetime seeking that moment of stability. The second stage that she says is necessary and inherent to moving through big moments is structural and intentional remembering and mourning. That saying grief is in the room is a necessary, evidence-based, necessary component to the work. And then the third step is to support each other, to say, like I mentioned earlier, how are you understanding what happened or is happening as a part of who you are in the world? Reconnection to life. It does not mean going back to normal or going back. I want to be really clear about that. It means helping integrate what happened with what's happening and how I can move with versus being added. Not added, acted, right? What do we know as educators in the room, as people in this world, what do we know? We are often led by first being told that we're safe and then skipping to getting back to normal. That part too is usually skipped over. So our invitation for that Chelsea and Marla and this whole room, the invitation is actually for us to try on something new, which is to say that grief is in the air. Grief is our teacher. What can we learn through and with it? Hand. Zero. The question was for the folks in Zoom, it's not necessarily linear. 0% linear. Always ebbing and flowing, always depending on who we're in the room with, depending on our resourcing, depending on so many different factors, right? We can be reconnecting with life as we are in deep mourning and vice versa. The last piece is something that we are going to invite you to imagine with us. which is a stage of this work that a lot of people don't talk about, that we use this word called renewal. It's after the crisis response or crisis recovery, but it's this idea of long-term, years after something happened, months after, long-term, and it is an invitation for us to renew ourselves, each other, our students, the work, by really committing to action, by digging into what root cause looks like, and by really taking on rigorous reflection. A lot of folks will ask us, how do I know if my students or myself, how do I know if I'm in a moment where I can even recover or renew? Maybe I'm just in response. And one of the biggest indicators is, if I came to you and I was like, what's your name? Christina. Christina, how have the last months felt? How are you making meaning? A lot of the questions we've been asking you this morning, and your whole body is like, I don't want to, who are you? Get out of my face. That is a beautiful signal that the nervous system hasn't created space for the prefrontal cortex to turn on, for reflection to engage. There's nothing wrong with that. It just is a good signal for me as your empathetic witness that maybe more stabilization and maybe even me saying, what are you grieving, needs to happen first. Any other questions or reflections about this piece right here? Okay. I'm going to offer two more steps. One of the biggest undercurrents, and actually was just added to the DSM in December, is a term called moral injury. Someone said, I know moral injury, I know that. Anyone else know moral injury in the room? Okay. So moral injury is a term that was mainly constructed post-Vietnam War era, but has surged in the last couple months and year. Moral injury refers to when we experience leadership, decisions, culture in a way that is morally incongruent with how we believe something should have been handled. There is an injury of our morality with how we believe that something should have been handled, or should have been moved, or should have been held. And the science and learning right now about the experience of moral injury is that it literally neurobiologically impacts us almost in mirror to PTSD. Almost in mirror. So again, that means when you are in a relationship, or you are working in a system or working in a culture where you are being led or being held by something that literally injures your way of belief of how humans should be seen and heard. The interesting part about moral injury, which is different than PTSD, is that one of the fundamental recovery or responses to moral injury is in peer connection, in mutuality. So that when people, so for example, in another space that Oriana and I work, we work with parents who have either lost their children or whose children are experiencing social media harm. Fentanyl through Snapchat, bullying through Facebook, right? They experience moral injury deeply because society is saying it was your fault. Social media companies are saying that's on you, you were supposed to protect your kids. And then what we did is we created parent-to-parent support spaces for them to show up in a room and go, oh, I am not losing my mind. What I experienced is real. I am human and deserve to be seen and heard and held. Exactly like what your colleagues have surfaced today. So I want to offer that the experience of moral injury is deeply connected to when we're talking about destabilization and times of change and crisis, because if you have a flicker in your body of going, I deserved a different way of being seen and held, or my students do, then that one of the biggest ways is to find peer connection, collaboration, and mutuality, to create spaces where people can say, yes, and me too also. Okay. We're gonna move to page 3 in that participant guide. And these are some of the pillars of renewal. of that last bucket of renewal. And what we've learned over the many years we've been doing crisis recovery and renewal work with educators is that these 4 pillars are really fundamental doors and windows to helping us find our new way of being or our reimagining the conditions of our lives. So the first pillar is root cause and reflection analysis. The second is meaning making. The third is restoration and identity shifts. And the fourth is healing, and here's a word that might feel resonant, repairing. I have never gotten more requests in my email for PD or workshops on repair and on apology from school districts across the country, right? I mean, it is incredible. I have my doctorate in educational leadership, not one course on repair or apology. Anyone else? And it is the fundamental practice of being an educator. Okay, so I'm gonna invite you to turn to page 3, and either by yourself, you know what you need at best in this moment, but either turn to yourself or someone next to you, and to check out which questions right now are making you go, ooh, or Which questions are you being drawn to? Because that might be some good indicator of what element of renewal you are seeking. So either can be quiet to yourself or can be with a partner. Page 3, and you'll see, I will bring us back in a couple minutes. Okay, I'm gonna invite you to find one question that you wanna speak out into the room that feels like a question you want the whole room to hear. So it might look like one of you out loud saying, what might it look like to move forward without moving on? And we can just popcorn the questions that you are feeling connected to in the room. A little bit louder. What may have surfaced through the crisis that we need to address? What data did the shooting give us? Not the shooting, but the way we held each other in it or after it, or didn't. One of our teachers who you met earlier, Bayo Kumalafe, says, what if the crisis is not actually the event, but the way that we held the crisis? Thank you. Okay, other questions? Literally just reading out which question resonates for you. What might be the underlying issues that contributed to the crisis? 2 years ago, we were working with a school district and in a high school, and a lot of their high school students were talking about wanting to die by suicide, and the school administration was very concerned about this. And when we dug deeper, the students identified mostly as queer, as trans, and in what we got to in this kind of conversation was, yes, holding concern for suicidal ideation, but actually shifting deep, hard root cause analysis of the transphobia of the school community. So the students weren't holding the crisis, it was the community culture that was. What might be the underlying issues? Okay, any others? Yes, please. What are the stories we are telling about the rupture as individuals or as a collective? Yeah, yeah. Wait, I'm gonna pause you because you're speaking a magical sentence.
Because I find that we are meaning-making machines, and that we keep telling the story and wanting to be the storyteller, the source, the authority, when really we inherited the version of the story, and we keep mastering it instead of being quiet.
So the under healing and repairing said, where might harm have been caused during response and recovery? How do we make it right? So at the end of last semester, after Coach Beam was killed, then we had another incident in class. A student came in, a victim of domestic violence. And a team of 5 people, including the head of SAS and chair of our department and so forth, we did pull together and we did help the student. But then the semester ended, and I just think there's so much that comes up at the end of the semester when students are in crisis, and we handle it, and it, like it says there, it looks like we've moved forward because time kept moving, and we started now we're about to start a new semester. But I feel like all the students in the classroom who witnessed what happened, we had to call security. There were threats. We actually thought it was going to be another incident of perhaps an active shooter, but it wasn't, thank goodness. But, this connects with what she said about there being a feeling of sadness about our community because it is dangerous. And what are we doing to help our students and ourselves in this atmosphere where we're feeling both institutional or governmental attack, and then particularly at Laney, because I'm at Laney, but I don't know what happens at College of Alameda and Berkeley, but at Laney, we're in the middle of it. It's an open campus. It's dangerous to be there. What are we doing? This is.
Thank you. Is there any body motion or head nod when you feel reverb? Someone speak. Yeah, I'm going to give you reverb. Yes, heard. So I'm going to offer one way of holding your question, which is a deep and necessary one. This work, it might seem like it's silly to say that this conversation is part of that work, but it is. So that you can acknowledge what students might be experiencing, you get to be acknowledged. And, what was your name? Shireen? Thank you. Part of what I want to go to what you've both brought up, which is sadness. Gabor Mate is a teacher, another teacher for the room. Gabor Mate is a teacher who offers us that feelings are gateways to understanding where we can step up and in for each other. And he offers us that when we are experiencing crises or have experienced crises, that it's usually 3 main feelings that our students will surface, that we will surface, that our families will surface, our communities. Sadness in the room, anxiety, and anger. Just as a show of hands, how many of us were taught how to do anger well growing up? Okay, well, these are your next keynote. That's them. That's real. But only 2 people in the room. I would have put my hand down also. Anger is something, especially for us as educators, anger is often not something that we're allowed to feel. And so I want to offer this language, and then Oriana will lead us through a way, Judy, that your questions and others can be further held. What Mate offers us is that when we see in our own bodies and those of our students and colleagues tiredness, guilt, shame, if you hear a lot of focus on the past, we can't do this because of what happened in 1972 or this one meeting 5 years ago, right? We focus on the past, that is great indication that sadness is in the room. And what Mate offers us is, instead of to be afraid of sadness or shamed of sadness, he says sadness is necessary for our bodies to address loss. Our bodies need to feel sad. And what he offers us is a question to either ask ourselves as our own empathetic witness or our students or our colleagues, which is, what have you lost? Maybe, Judy, it's a sense of safety or a sense of predictability. Maybe there's a sadness actually about that we as a community have become conditioned to expect the unexpected. That when violence happens, we go, uh-huh. The second gateway feeling that Mate offers us is anxiety, overwhelm, panic, hard to focus, hard to sleep. And what he invites us to do is to re-alchemize the way we understand anxiety. Instead of, the shame or stigma about anxiety, is to say anxiety actually is helping us deeply to protect against threat, and the work is to right-size it so that we're not thinking everything is a threat, but we're attuning into what is feeling real. But the most important is for us to go, I'm feeling anxious. What am I fearing in this moment? What am I fearing in this moment? Or what have I feared? And then the last is anger. Tense muscles, focusing on what's unfair. Again, I have a 3-year-old. I hear that all the time. Frustration, resentment. And Mate, again, offers us that anger is necessary because it helps us defend and orient towards justice. And you can ask this question to yourself or to others: how have I been violated? Violated is a strong word. It can evoke a lot. So it also can mean, how has my humanity been crossed? Where have I been morally injured? Where have my students been morally injured? So Judy, the wild part about, not just Judy, everyone, but the wild part about this work that we found is even taking the moment to presence these feelings and to presence these questions can actually help move our sense of connection and our sense of stabilization in times of grief and loss. Grief is sometimes talked about as losing someone or losing something or losing land. And yes, another way that we talk about grief is a reorientation. Who are we now without this person? Or who are we now without this funding stream? Or who am I without my mom? Or who am I now without my kid? And it's a experience where the body is literally, I'm gonna do the reorienting to a new reality. And the last piece that I'll close on before I hand it to Oriana is that what we deeply know is that none of this work can be done alone, none. And it doesn't happen automatically. Yes, our bodies are wired for neurosynapse reconnection. Our bodies are yearning for healing, but it has to happen in community, in collegiality, in peer, and in structural witnessing like we're doing right now. So I'm going to hand it to Oriana, who will move us through and into a practice where we can be each other's structural witness and our own, and do a little bit more investigation.
And Judy and everyone else who is holding this same sentiment, I just want to be a witness and sharing that I too feel deep sorrow for Oakland right now and what our young people are traversing. I can only imagine what it's like to be 17, 18 right now, trying to make your way in this world. And we're inundated with images of suffering in other cities and states and other places in the world. But folks here in Oakland are having it in so many ways really difficult right now. And to be an educator, meeting those young people where they're at, or all people engaging in school and learning where they're at. My experience was I felt very alone in it because schools are looked at to solve the social problems of the world without any real tools, support, or acknowledgement of that expectation. And so I just want to say that the level of suffering right now is really intense. And I think what we're hoping to do is to soften us a bit through slowing down to the impact that has on us. And the more in which we can tend to ourselves, the more equipped we are to tend to the needs of our community. And the more we're able to settle our nervous system, the more we can handle the young person or the person who comes in needing like immediate, urgent physical safety, right? When we are dysregulated, it's really hard for us to ask the right questions, acknowledge the right elements, tap into the right people in those moments of crisis. And so this is about tending to our nervous systems, finding anchors that support us in staying grounded so that we can get creative, so that we can be in authentic, meaningful partnership that transforms the lives of our community. And so we're gonna walk through another kind of journaling, introspective practice, and then come together with our partner that we met before or in small groups of 4. And so I'll just kind of share what the practice is. There's 4 steps to it. The first 3 are here. We're going to, on a piece of paper, I think it's pages 5 and 6 in your guide, there's quadrants. Those quadrants have quite a few questions in them, but the invitation is to spend some time thinking about your personal wisdom and inner knowledge and values, your pedagogical wisdom and daily practices, your relational and collective care, and the collective power and structural support that is, and also that we might need to branch out and find or secure or create. And so we'll take about 5 minutes to jot down. It can be full sentence, it can be bullet points, it can be image, your response to these questions. And this might just be a starting point, something that we can return to on our own at a different time or in teams. Are there any questions before we spend some time going into this writing practice? We'll have about 5 minutes, and then the invitation is to read over what it is you wrote, what it is that surfaced, circle some things, find some themes, and identify anchors. Again, our nervous system is constantly, literally constantly looking for anchors of safety. And many of those anchors exist already within us. So this is about being our own witness, affirming them, cultivating them, bringing them forward.
Wave us down if you need support.
So in the guide on 5 and 6, one page has the quadrants with these questions, and the next page is blank quadrants for you to respond. All right, finish up the idea, the thought, the feeling. And we're going to turn to 4 people, 3 other people, making a group of 4, to share our journaling, our reflection with. This is really surfacing the resources that exist within me, within us, right? And the resources that we need to still find. And that's a really important question to spend some time collaboratively talking about. So here are some prompts for sharing your anchor map. What patterns or values emerged? What anchors feel most alive or sustaining to you? what feels intact and strengthened, and what is still needed as we're returning to the new semester. So find 3 other people. Hopefully you don't need to move too much to find those 3. If you could choose someone to be the discussion director, someone to be the timekeeper, you have about 7 minutes, someone to be the note taker, and someone to be the process observer if you're getting off track. Okay. All right. It would be so beautiful if we could surface some of what came up in our conversations and our journaling with a full group. But this is brave and vulnerable share. So let's give full attention. Is anyone open to share what's surfacing for you? Just sitting with these questions through journaling, through conversation. What is feeling most profound to you right now? All right, thank you.
I would love to share, but I actually want to nominate someone who's really powerful and who we were lucky to have in our group. So Lily, I would like for you to share.
Okay, I'm a reluctant sharer. I think that we had different perspectives that were on display from our group. Some were more internal and focused on the personal, and then some were more collective, and I think thinking about the we. And then others were more thinking about the journey and the process that we're currently in. So I felt like we had the whole spectrum of experiences, but I will share, since I was nominated, I studied holistic health in like another past life, and so I wrote a book about how to make higher education campuses more holistic and healing centered. So I was saying like all of this is my jam. I'm like, this is me 360. So one thing that has helped me though in doing these type of exercises has been to think symbolically. And so instead of trying to think of the words and how to articulate things exactly right, I use symbols a lot for my reflection, and I even do that with my journaling practice. And so I drew pictures for the 4 quadrants, and some of the pictures I drew was in the top one about inner knowledge. I drew a picture of a heart, and then on the bottom one about collective care, I drew a picture of an apple for Johnny Appleseed. For the pedagogical wisdom, I drew a picture of a question mark and also those approximation squiggly lines, and also a picture of a cross. And then for the bottom, collective power and structural support, I had a picture of a Black Panther, and I'll allow those symbols to be interpreted any way this audience would like to do that.
Thank you. Did anyone else draw rather than use word? Okay. All right. Is there a hand over there? You drew. Okay. The math guy drew. Yes. It'd be so beautiful to hear from a few more people.
Another voluntold. Y'all are quick on the voluntolding. We didn't have that as a part of our working agreement, so I guess it's free range on the voluntold. Are you cool with Okay, he's there.
Yes, we shared and worked on, what I spoke on was like a new normal, and I related it to the fact that those of you who are old enough remember before 9/11, we had different things that we went through. For airline, you get ready to get on the plane, you walk all the way up to the gate, say goodbye to your family. Everything was, real pleasant, and nowadays you can't do that any longer. you have to stop and say goodbye to them before they even go up there for boarding or anything like that. And so now this is our new normal. So with life, there is constant change. If you are well enough to have an anchor before this, you have to hold on to those things because you're going to deal with change no matter what. When you're young, you have all these group of people that are around you. As you get older, few of those people are going to be with you. But if you have an anchor and know you can be strong and accept the fact that, okay, life changes. I have to move on. I have to stay strong because that's what they would want you to do. They love you. They want you to move on and be strong and help the next ones that are around you so that they can be strong. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. I think, the image that we shared earlier with like the stages, though there weren't any stages, the work is so continual, right? Like affirming our anchor is crisis readiness work. It's also the support of crisis recovery, and it's the pathway towards renewal. So also deeply entwined, having our anchors, right? And again, just naming how great at society is at disconnecting us from our anchors. So it is our responsibility in our work, and it's not fluffy work, right? To slow down, to notice, to name, to access our anchors. Yeah. Fluff, we tried that. It's not strong enough for this moment, right? Yeah. All right, we have one more.
I got you, Ori. Okay, people power.
Yes, hella people power, yeah.
Thank you. One of the things that came up in our conversation was ecosystem. And there's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that was shared, and then a relation to that. The quote, "We are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness." And then a resonant idea that came up for me was, that there's that saying, I teach so that I may learn. Mm-hmm. Right? We can flip around and say, I learn so that I may teach, right? So each one of us, no matter what role we play in the institution, in the classroom, whatever, is both a teacher and a learner. And the more of us that see that, then the more connected our social ecosystem can be, and the more strong our social fabric can be, right? And so one question I want to start posing to the people I meet and to the people I work with in terms of students or just people around is, what are you here to learn and what are you here to teach? Because each one of us has to answer that question. Thanks.
Thank you. That's such a profound paradigm shift, and it will be felt, right? It's not just words that you will speak, a question you'll pose at the beginning of a semester, but really believing that will be felt, and that lives with us for the rest of our lives, right? That changes our neural pathways when we can feel received in such beautiful, powerful ways. I want to share that we were built for connection, and we were built for co-regulation, and our healing is deeply connected to our connection, right? So there is work that we absolutely do have to do on our own. We're responsible for that, but there's really important work that we have to do together, and it's been really powerful to witness and to feel the energy of your conversations. Let's see here. Yeah, so there's a few more questions. As we were thinking about what we're experiencing, what we wrote, what we shared, what we just heard, right? Why is this mattering most to us right now? The invitation to notice, the invitation to tend to our nervous systems and our emotional experience. Why is that so important for me, for you, for us, for our students right now? And what small action, there's a beautiful paradigm shift, that's huge, right? To create a culture in a classroom where students are seen and felt as co-contributors, as teachers, as well as learners, right? So what big or small shifts might you make in the rest of your planning before Monday, right? In the way you receive your new students as they come in the first few weeks. Invitation to quietly reflect. You can keep that to yourself or you can say it out loud. We love a witness. A shift you're thinking about possibly making. If you're holding that, what support might you need? Personally, I was a teacher for 20 years. I would start with great ideas. And come October or February, I was just barely surviving, right? All my systems had kind of gone out the window, right? So what support might you need from yourself? What resource? And from others? I think...
We have someone who wants to...
Oh, we do, yes, beautiful.
I like what Leora said earlier on, repetition. I am the kind of person that learn from you told once, then you act on it. But this generation, you have to repeat 1,000 times. And I finally learned that. But it's a great and difficult habit to cultivate because the pace of the knowledge that is expected in my students is deep and vast. And you don't have time to repeat. So now one thing that I promise myself is every so often I repeat information that I know they need to in my syllabus so that I can just call their attention to it every week. That way, I don't have to repeat it. I just say, okay, make sure you look at those information. It's important. And that's what I plan to do.
A living syllabus, yeah. Thank you. I mean, the new normal, right, is that we're different today than we were 5 years ago, right, pre-COVID. We're different than we were 10 years ago, right? And one of my most favorite questions is, who do my students need me to be in this moment, right? Someone okay with repetition, someone finding the systems that remind, right, or repeat. We're going to move into a quote that okay.
Yeah? Okay. Did you want to do this one or you want to do Mac?
I want to do Mac.
You want to do Mac. I can tell. Her eyebrows said, don't do this one. Okay, we're going to do Mac, and then we're gonna close. Is anyone willing to read this quote out loud? Okay. Yes, please.
It's me again. Okay, I'm just kidding. An individual's psychology can heal by finding the courses of action that match one's felt need. But there are no skipped steps. Sitting with discomfort is always first, followed by connection and inspiration. But at the end of the day, we need action to metabolize grief and transform our material and cultural conditions. Metabolized grief can power deep and lasting change, infused with profound joy, while unmetabolized grief becomes an almost insurmountable barrier to it.
Part of what grief does, and we're going to move into our closing. So one of grief's greatest superpowers, and this speaks to the repetition, part of what grief does, it exhausts us in a way that is different than other kinds of exhaustion. Grief exhausts the body. Grief exhausts particularly memory and recall. And so if any of us have a connection to experiencing and metabolizing grief. It's a real direct invitation and strong invitation for this room to actually embrace that things will need a little bit more time, things will need a slower pace, and things will need more repetition, just as our colleague was saying, to help the brains in this room and the bodies and the brains outside of this room. I want to just invite you as we close. We started with these beautiful questions that Oriana invited us to sit with. And we want to invite you, just like repetition is important, so is returning back and reviewing and reflecting over and over again. I want to invite you to maybe find that question that 2 hours ago you were checking out on a first date and have a second date. How are you seeing that question differently? What from this last 2 hours would you add to it? Maybe you're ready to lay down a couple more things. Or maybe the things that you are ready to lay down are exactly the same, and so you are affirmed in your truth 2 hours ago. All of these questions are not just for this room, but they're questions that you can bring to conversation with your students and with your colleagues. Ori and I want to close with these final invitations for this room. Judy, you were mentioning this wild world of time, the construct of time. A semester ends. That doesn't mean that someone's experience of what happened did. Many moons ago, I did my doctoral research in the impact of student death on teachers. And it was a mixed method analysis. And when we ran statistical analysis of the difference of teachers' self-reported resilience from teachers who had lost students 3 months before I talked to them and 20 years since I talked to them, time was not statistically significant. The factor that made the difference in the teacher's self-reported resilience was if they had had one conversation with someone about their experience. One. So what that means is there is always time for the work. Just because something happened last semester, there's invitation and even more invitation in our framework of renewal to return to it. Not everyone is going to want to be involved in that kind of reflection, and that's okay. Part of our work is to constantly have conversations so that when others are ready, there is an open door for them. I want to see. Okay, so these are our invitations. Any other words you want to offer, Ori, before we close?
Just will say out loud that it really is our duty in this lifetime, in this moment, to find, to practice, to access healing for ourselves. And it has a direct connection to the work that we do for others. And so, yeah.
And so, yeah. That's it.
And so, yeah.
That's it. All that profound quote, all this, and so, yeah. That's it. Okay. Last, we're going to end with poetry because poetry is truly medicinal. We'll end with poetry. I invite you to close or lower your eyes if you're open to it and just hear how these words land for you, our dear colleagues. On days when you feel like a wilting garden, gather yourself, roll up your lawn and bouquet your flowers and embrace your weeds. You are a wild thing, playing at being tame. You are rich with life beneath the surface. You don't have to show leaf and petal to be living. You are soil and you are insect and you are root. You are soil and you are insect and you are root. All of us know that what the surface level is how we behave with each other, the next level is how we feel with each other, and then the deeper work is how we meet each other's needs and our own. So we want to just offer a closing as we move. We can hear lunch in the hallway, so first of all, mad props to y'all who stayed with it the whole time together. We want to offer that if any of you are interested in more work around life after loss and grief work,
Oriana, myself, we're hosting, and many other teachers are hosting next week a completely free, no-cost, full day of learning that's open to the public, QR code there. Day 1 is a full day of learning. Day 2, Oriana has curated just specifically for educators and providers to process what we have been holding. So join us next week. We also, on the website of schoolcrisishealing.org, we have 2 guides of how to hold ourselves after death, and also how potentially to metabolize grief together. So there's lots of resources for you to extend this conversation. And the last resource that we wanted to name and QR code there is a piece that we feel that is a goodie bag, takeaway, whatever. An article that we wrote now 2 years ago on this concept of grief work that we've all touched base and engaged with. Thank you to Chelsea, who has put the participant guide and the deck already up on your schedule, so you can have all the things, have all of it, take it, run with it, have all of it. And lastly, and most importantly, we want to just say these words out loud together, that we belong to each other. In our grief, we belong to each other, and in our solidarity, we belong to each other, and in our hope, we belong to each other. Thank you. We'll stick around for lunch afterwards. We're so grateful for this time.